Bismillahir-Rahman-Rahim.
Reasons for Decline of Muslims.
By Allama Ghulam Ahmed Parwez. Part 3.
Differences.
An order or program whose standard of authenticity is based on real and solid results has no room at all for differences. It is akin to chemical analysis. If, for example, scientists in 20 laboratories throughout the world analyzed water, all their results would be one and the same, i.e., the resultant elements would be hydrogen H2 and oxygen O, indicating that in this matter there would be no difference of any kind at all. Difference only arises if you dissociate yourself from the matter-of-fact world and merely get entangled in arguments of theoretical and abstract nature. Deen assess concrete results as the standard of its judgment, and these results, real and solid, will portray themselves right before you in this world. Hence, there was no room or possibility of any kind for differences in it at all. One law, one order, and its followers are but one organization with one manner of thought and one way, consequently, one and only one result. Then from where could disunity, confusion, differences and mutual opposition come? But when Deen changed into religion, then the entire talk was relevant to or aimed at the hereafter. And since no one could see or peer into the hereafter, it was not possible to verify whether the claimants of the hereafter are correct or incorrect. For example, if someone tells me to perform namaz, in the manner he shows whereby my salvation is assured, then along comes someone else with yet another mode of performing it with my salvation assured. But since I have no means to ascertain the method with which I could attain salvation,
then what could I expect from all the theoretical beliefs and their acts and rituals, the results of which are shifted to the next world? The inevitable result is differences.
Therefore, the Ummah, after being reduced into religion, got divided into 72 sects. What is so surprising about it? The Quran has termed as shirk to be divided into sects. Hence, the religion could be questioned as to why it has sects. Lane reply, again the concoction of tradition would come in handy. A phrase was carved out meaning, in my ummah differences will be a blessing, and then attributed to that venerable and respected person, the Rasul, whose enunciated aim was to remove and delete difference from the world. When this saying became hadith, then what doubt could there be that differences should become a blessing? While the Quran declares sects and such splinter groups as shirk, this hadith has precisely presented it as a blessing. While all this was happening on behalf of religion, the worldly ones, the members of monarchy, were mutually engaged in fights. In exact contrast to Deen, power in monarchy lies in the hands of humans, and once it comes in the hands of man, then his only desire is that it remains only with him, but so would his opponents. Consequently, in a monarchical form of government, to break up into pieces is a natural phenomenon. By now, religion had created such a state of affairs that the majority of its followers became strictly converted into aversionists and detesters of anything and everything worldly, with the end result, that they were blindly occupied in the preparation for the hereafter, or were entangled in its snares, and by their abstract oratory dismembered their unity into pieces, dividing them into sects and groups. In the meantime, it seemed that the world had shrunk at the other end of the scale and rolled comfortably in the hands of a few individuals. A handful of families who ruled the world, but not without the usual carnage. Thus began the bloodbath in trying to divide their mutual share. Hence, during the period when there was no war and peace prevailed, the millith was ensnared in religious debates and arguments. When, during mutual monarchical battles, the millith was drawn into it by the priests, they would declare the battles to be jihad, and soon the gullible followers were in the midst of the battlefields, where one Muslim would pierce his sword into the chest of another Muslim. But the ruthless religious priests had the balm or elixir for every moment. They would say that the Muslim slain is shaheed, martyr, and the slayer, another Muslim, an honored heroic Muslim soldier, is ghazi, the victor. Whereas the Quran beckons them saying, 4:93, anyone who deliberately and intentionally slays any mu'min will go straight into hell where he will abide forever. And on him will be Allah's wrath and his curse, for him will be ready a very severe punishment. This was the proclamation of Allah, but these champions of religion were making and dividing these killers into moths, the self-immolating lovers of paradise, for the simple reason that this is what the monarchy wanted of them. It was the plot and conspiracy to perpetuate both the religious status and the monarchy. If anyone, with an open mind reads the foregoing, he would unhesitatingly and without any doubt come to the conclusion that all this transpired without thought, wisdom or prudence. Then again, in him, without doubt, this question will arise as to how religion was able to make the people act so recklessly. Though they were not Muslims, after all, they were human beings. If not with Quranic insight and wisdom, then at least with human thought and intellect, or just the exercise of the mind itself, had they not fallen prey to these weak ruses of religion. Religion was also aware of such dangers. Therefore it had also beforehand thought out and devised ways and means to safeguard it.
There is no reason in religion.
Deen, in support of its claim to truthfulness, always corroborates it by proof and manifestations of concrete and constructive results. 12:108. Therefore, its invitation, based wholly upon total insight and prudence, was the enemy of religion. This was why religion had created this belief that in religious affairs wisdom and common sense have no right of admission and therefore no interference. The one who turns towards wisdom and common sense to trace its roots or causes will be included in the group of Iblis, because the first one to have made use of rational speculation was Iblis. As against this, paradise is for fools. Therefore all what is being said to you is to act upon it without thought or understanding. This is what religion told its early audiences. Then to the generations that followed it advised that they should keep in mind the way of their forefathers and ancestors, and carefully follow their manner, behavior, acts and deeds.
You conform by closing your eyes and following their footsteps.
This is the path of Sawab and therefore paradise. Ancestor worship. As has always been the case, every theoretical view and concept brought by religion has been the messenger of ruin and destruction. This belief in ancestral conformity proved to be most effectively damaging and detrimental. Do consider, what is the distinctive feature between man and animal?
Evidently it is wisdom.
No, in a belief and way of life that is divorced from wisdom and common sense, man becomes worse than an animal. This is the reason why the Quran has called those who do not use wisdom and insight as 8:22, the worst of the created, and declared them worse than animals. 7:179. By blind conformity man's state and condition becomes such. They have hearts wherewith they understand not, and have eyes but they see not, they have ears but they hear not. About them it has been declared they will go straight to hell.
Their way and conduct is such as the manner in which they saw their forefathers, they heedlessly followed them with blind expectations, eyes shut and lips tight. 37:69-70. Where else can their abode be but in hell? Consider this great fact that the Quran has shown the abode to be hell for those who blindly follow their ancestors without using wisdom, common sense and the perceptual senses. This is not the place to discuss heaven and hell. 37:68.
At this point, just consider that in the universe every element, matter etc., is in a state of evolutionary process, ever moving forward. Any element or matter, if for some reason stops moving forward, it disintegrates. As in the outer universe, so in the human world as well, the law of evolution is prevalent and in force. Only through the path of knowledge, education and learning does the evolution of humankind take place. Every new generation has before it the environmental obstacles and impediments which, if it overcomes, it continues to move forward. This is the name and purpose of creation. Life is just another name of this creative urge. The purpose of creation is the dynamism of ideas. New, fresh, and modern. If people lose their freshness of thought, and if their capacities and powers, and potentialities of thought are held in abeyance or suspension, then they become unfit and unworthy of creativity. Consequently, instead of being dynamic and organically alive, they turn into a heap of earth and stone. And new world of ideas and thought cannot be constructed with mere earth and stones. Those people who traverse to cover the evolutionary process are the rightful owners of Jannah. Heaven, declares the Holy Quran, and to come to a stop at any stage it describes it as Jahannam. The experts on the law of evolution tell us that if any living, animate thing or being does not use an organ or limb, then nature, gradually, regarding it to be something useless, stops its creation itself. In like manner, if a people just do away with the use of all of their faculties of thought and wisdom, then, after some generations, these people lose their capacities and potentialities to think, reason and understand. These are the destructive and far-reaching effects of blind conformity about which we have made reference to in the preceding pages. It is not that it affects only the present generation with ruination and destruction. Even the coming generations will be doomed. Among these people, humans are not born. Only anime are born and animals they die. In view of this fatalistic conformity and destruction, Quran has with forceful severity and in equally forceful terms opposed it. It has explained that the message of every messenger was against this blind conformity, and for this very reason these messengers were met with very strong opposition. They invited these conformists towards knowledge and understanding, meaning, deen, while the people in a habitual manner described the life of their forefathers as attractive. Allah's messengers shook them to arouse them, even that was met with no less severe opposition. But their opposition was paradoxically proper and correct. Zoologists tell us that bats once, like other birds, had eyes that were open. But when they stopped using their eyes, they became so structured that light became their enemy and they could not withstand sunlight, and the sun became their worst enemy. If they had their way, so to speak, they would not let the sun rise at all. The messenger bestowed the light of deen, and the people, in the manner of bats, could not withstand this light and no wonder strongly opposed it. Every messenger conveyed the same message and each was with equal manner opposed, says the Quran. When Noah invited his people towards the light of deen, they gave the same reply. 23:24. We have not heard it from our ancestors. Therefore, we are not prepared to accept what you state. This was the answer received by Salah. 11:62. What? You are preventing us from the servitude whose servitude and devotion was continuously carried out by our forefathers and ancestors. This was the answer also given by the people of Shub. 11:80. This again was the answer received by Moses. 10:78. What? Have you come to us so that you deviate us from the path on which we saw our ancestors? This is the answer received by Abraham. 26:74. This was also the answer received by Muhammad, peace be upon him. 31:21. And when it is said to them that follow and obey all that has been revealed by Allah, they say, no,
We will only follow and obey that which our ancestors had been continuously following and obeying.
Do consider, with what clarity, Quran has differentiated deen from religion. Religion teaches ancestral conformity while deen comes to put an end to this blind conformity so that man, in the light of revelation, may use it in his wisdom and intellect, which in fact is the honor and integrity, its respect and adoration for being the son of Adam. But the epoch and ages of blind conformity have made them blind like a bat, and they shriek out when they face light. Quran says this is what kept on happening to the invitation extended by every Rasul. 14:10. It shows from historical evidence and precedents as to how this blind ancestral following makes man lose his sense of judgment, so much so that intellect, which was his distinctive feature, appears to him something pitch dark. In this belief, since the future appears dark, the past seems glorious. This is so because man's eyes, instead of being in the front, are turned backward. His face becomes inverted, i.e.,
his eyes are facing backwards.
This is the life of Jahannam. 33:66.
On that day their faces will be turned inverted in Jahannam.
These are those walking with face backwards, about whom it is said in another place. 67:22. What is the one walking with his face inverted, topsy-turvy, on the straight path, or the one who is walking on a straight and balanced path? Due to age-old blind conformity, it is said in Surah Yasin that the iron collars of ancient rites are yoked so badly on their necks that their necks seem to rise and stick up so that they cannot even see the path in front of them. 36:8. Our laws have affixed such iron collars and neck braces on their necks that they reach up to their chins, creating a situation and condition whereby 157.
Their heads rise up, and they just cannot see at all the path before them.
These are the very yokes and iron collars that the messenger came to release them from. After a prolonged period of blind servitude, a people's thought and potentialities, etc., become so paralytic that they are simply unable to function.
In the words of the Quran,
36:9. Our laws of nature draw walls both in front of them and behind them, and, on their wisdom and intellect, draw curtains, and their vision is seized. In its stage of infancy, the mind did not possess the capability or the capacity that every generation might find ways for itself. There were but a very few who would move away from the common ways or paths.
Meaning the brains that would create new ways were rarely born.
Therefore, for every generation that came, it was easy for them to follow the cautious mode of collecting the discourses and narratives of their ancestors, and simply follow them blindly in word and deed. This is what is called ancestor worship. In any case, in those ages and epochs, time moved at such a slow and lazy pace that new demands, requirements and necessities did not appear rapidly. The Quran introduced a new chapter in the history of humans. The treasures of wisdom and knowledge could now be accessible to all. Now man's mind had reached the age of maturity. Therefore, for men the correct way now to act upon is that they with their inductive knowledge carefully carve and shape their own path. To save humankind from the unnecessary possible failures encountered in its method of trial and error, the Quran has offered humankind permanent principles never to be altered by the passage of time. In the light of these principles, it says, every generation according to the demands and needs of its times should solve its problems. Permanently fixed principles are given because the method of human wisdom is purely experimental, the trial and error method. If faced with some new problem, then the human reason, by way of experimentation, uses a particular mode or way towards solving it. But then after hard-breaking and practical experiments he learns of his failures. Then, once again, he starts anew on some other experimentation and adopts some other route for his journey. Reason, in this way, makes man's search backbreaking, and only after crossing trenches of blood and experiencing the pungent and bitter fumes of failure, does it reach near its goal. Revelation has saved humankind from this toil and has given permanent principles for life, so that in its beam of light the goal is easily attained. In the words of the great poet and philosopher Dr. Allama Iqbal, the aim of revelation was the economizing of human efforts. Consequently, humankind now has the light or revelation, the eyes of the mind and the experience of the past generation, which is called the aide de mémoire, or memorandum of history. Their experiences or history is very useful, which is why Quran has highlighted its importance. There is considerable difference in gaining experience and blindly walking on the old tracks. This was the order of Deen. But religion has once again chained and yoked the coming generations in blind conformity of the elders and thus pushed the otherwise progressive humankind back to the age of its infancy. And in this way man's history has regressed thousands of years. Hatred and hatred alone. In this blind ancestor worship humans have regressed into a position where their faculties of wisdom and thought do not function at all. To carry the argument further, aversion to the war-id and enmity towards knowledge and wisdom result in hatred of every element in the universe. Consequently, in the eyes of the religious people every corner of the universe seems to be evil and evil alone. To them every thing of beauty becomes a thing of abhorrence and scorn. Every smiling face to them is a mirror of death, and every flower-strewn forehead, logs and blocks of wood for hell. When spring comes and joyously swings, they moan and sigh. On a beautiful, smiling, moonlit night they sob and wrench their faces. Their sad faces and lackluster eyes only go to show that they are of those whose height of desires happen to be that. Even if ever a smile were to come to me, I would rather weep instead. Beauty of nature. In their religion, literature, music, and science, elegant and pleasant adornment, and their means and resources are all haram. Forbidden. Whereas Deen, itself bathed in the beauty of nature, teaches and educates us how to add and increase this beauty in the universe. In the universe, it explains, every element and matter is in a correct proportion and that each and every element or matter is in its appropriate position. That when everything remains as it is apportioned, then the end result would be beauty of the universe. Even if constructive element is removed from its rightful place, then that good element becomes evil. Beauty is the name of proportion, balance and symmetry, which means that every element or matter should be in its symmetrical or apportioned position. In the words of Pascal, if the nose of Cleopatra were a bit flat, then the map of history would be something else. Deen explains that, for the motor car, or vehicle of life, mobile oil is indispensable along with petrol. Evil emerges when mobile oil is filled up in the petrol tank.
The motor car then cannot move any further.
Consequently, according to Deen, it is the means to create, while remaining within the limits laid down by Allah. Hududullah. The luster and brightness of the heart and vision, and to develop man's latent capabilities. But man-made religion knits its brows and frowns at every beautiful sketch or map of nature and declares it haram.
Limits laid down by Allah or Hududullah.
A perusal of the Quran indicates that only a few things are declared haram. The list of things that one is to stay away from is very small. For the remaining affairs, simply boundary lines are drawn. And human thought and intellect is left independent, free to soar, within these boundaries, so that it finds a solution itself to its problems. It limits as little as possible the freedom and liberty of human thought. The aim of the Quran is to raise man's potentialities as much as possible. 91. 9.
He who has raised the potentials of human self, his will be a rewarding harvest.
In contrast, religion from birth till death.
In fact, after death too.
On each and every step keeps issuing endless orders. When raising the right foot, do this; when raising your left, recite this; when drinking water, do it in this manner, so on and so forth. Haram,
forbidden,
and halal, permissible. As has been already said, Deen has declared very few things haram. There are, if you care to look up, endless lists and piles of books in religion declaring nearly everything, so it seems, haram. In the Quran, after declaring a handful of things as haram, it goes on to state 116. And be mindful, never state any lies that comes up on your tongue unhesitatingly, that this thing is halal and that haram. In this way, to distinguish halal and haram is mischief-making and scandal-mongering on Allah, because He has already declared haram all those things that He wanted to. It is no simple matter for men to declare something haram. It tantamount to squeeze the freedom of humankind for all times, which is why this authority is not given to anyone in Deen. 7:32. Ask them of Allah's elegance and beauty that He has created for His believers and the good and wholesome food and drinks, as to who has declared it haram. Thereby, Allah says, who is there besides Him who could declare a thing haram? The religious monopolists say, as a challenge, that it is they who could declare a thing haram. It is their permanent assertion of Allah to compare His list with their list and see for himself as to whose list of haram is lengthy. He will then know as to who has the greater authority to declare things haram. This is the direct result of when Deen is turned into religion, and those powers, which are limited to the domain of Allah only, are changed or transferred into human hands. The ruling class encircles the people into its obedience while the priests take them into their circle of subjugation and obedience, i.e., laws and rules are trumped up that this is haram and that is halal, or do this and don't do that.
All being despotic subjugation by religion, which are under no circumstances less than the royal commands.
But the grip of the religious priests is more severe and stronger in their influence, for the reason that royal commands and its effects are momentary. Monarchy and governments come and go, but the power and might and influence of religion is an ongoing continuity. The throne and crown does not have the satisfaction that is found in the royalty and majesty of the priestly opinions and verdicts, i.e., the fatwa. God has bestowed on man free will. The order of Deen creates expansiveness and varied dimensions in the free will, resulting in humankind's rise and total evolution.
Whereas religion with its despotic laws steam-rules the human free will, leading humans to a hopelessly inhuman life.
When you are forced to lead an uncivil and inhuman life, then result will be that 1. Either human self will be mutilated, or you leave or drop off the eminence of free will and lead a life similar to that of animals and vegetables. In religion, the majority leads such a life, that is why they lead this life of blind ancestral conformity. 2. Or you will rebel due to these tyrannical restrictions and oppose it so vehemently as not to respect even the limits of Deen. No wonder, these people usually become atheists. 3. Or live a life of a hypocrite. Hypocrisy, munafiqat. The last category requires some detail. Because religion restricts what is otherwise permissible, and obstructs the path and makes life unbeatable. Man therefore desires to remove or just break out of these restrictions. But the sanctity of religion does not allow him to do it publicly. Therefore, he is left with the choice of fraudulently threshing out ways and means by way of excuses.
To them music is haram, but to listen to the harp without the association of other musical instruments is not harmful.
Should this be not found to his satisfaction, then he will listen to the aforesaid music in Qawwali, where the choral band plays light music while the chorister lays stress on the words, which now becomes allowable and lawful. Anything that falls to their taste not only becomes lawful but even abadit. Art is something to be severely detested. Photography is haram, forbidden, but the photographing of the upper half, the bust, is allowed. The conception of beauty, its miraculous wonder, is enough to send him straight to hell. But it is again legal and lawful for him to talk of God as a truly beloved sweetheart, and enjoy poetry that has seductive, rousing, deceptive phraseology in the expressions is enough to drive him into rapture, while the revealing and detailed particulars of this imaginary beloved lead him into final ecstasy. Thus, he enjoys the luxury of mental debauchery. Psychologists regard this sort of enjoyment as hypocritical repression that causes sex perversion, and its demonstration is nauseating and disgusting in its depths.
No wonder those who claim of not even raising an eye at other women enter into unlimited number of marriages, one after the other, in rapid succession. Not to mention the relationship these sex perverts have with the concubines.
With the temerity to declare such indulgences to be exactly in accord and compatible to Shariat-e-Haqqa, true Islamic jurisprudence. Have a look at the religious books and you will be surprised to see the number dealing with the problems relating to the science of sex. The details are given with such vulgarity and obscenity that even the eyes of shame itself will bow down in shame. The aim of Deen was simply to check, habituate, find, evolve, which was inseparable from the order and code of Islam and human society, and so necessary for its development. The resultant behavior in the society is not due to unnatural pressures but rather the fixation of river banks and coastlines from the flooding and rampaging waters. While religion, with its tyrannical and unnatural cramming of the face of the river with unnatural mounds,
resulting in the waters piercing the underground as if in hiding, when no sooner soft land is found than it shows or pops up its head.
This is so because it is in its nature to rise. It was the demand of the waters, which is not to be suppressed. The destruction and devastation referred to in previous pages were all that religion had wrought on the external world. And stated above is the wickedness it has created in the hearts and minds, in the inner world where it has settled down. These evils in turn mutilated the character itself completely. If a people, for a period of time, begin to lead such a life or become accustomed to it, then in them courage, valor, exhilaration and the happy, cheerful face is seized, and in its place lowliness, meanness, petty-mindedness, narrow-mindedness, sin and a life of seclusion is created. Religious order of manners and morality. But religion, in order to disguise these sins, blemishes an infirmity into good qualities, and calls it the order of manners and morality. It declares weakness, helplessness and supplication the signs of God's bondsman. Low and mean-spiritedness, petty-mindedness and lack of courage is named as perseverance and trust in God. And it never lets starvation be made known. In fact, they veil it with utmost deceit and fraud. The opium of illiteracy is shown as the will of God, and antidote as good as any. Whereas Deen came to declare that the behavior and acts of all those powerful and instigating rebels who have pounced on the resources of food and provisions, as if they belonged to their father and forefathers and sat on them coiled up like snakes, befit that their wrists be twisted and divine provisions be provided to the people of God. In contrast, religious order of morality calls such naked and brazen exploitation as blessings of God, and thus offers open license to looting, high-handedness and disharmonies. Since the circle of influence is restricted to the poor only, therefore it is with ease religion is able to make them comply with their order of manners and morality. As for those in affluence, high social strata, the resting power, authority and administration, religion feels it sufficient to give them religious sermons.
Sermons are delivered to the effect that tyranny is evil, the indigent should not be harassed, and they should be given their rightful due.
A beggar should not be turned out. The needy should not be treated badly or reproved. Religion considers it sufficient that it keeps on advising thus. This it has described as encouraging the good and preventing the evil. If from the wealthy and the powerful class, a beggar's piece is thrown to the poor, religion begins immediately to eulogize and write poems in their glory. The ruling and the upper class has after all usurped and pillaged everything which actually belonged to those poor, the needy and the indigents, with whose self-connotations and meanings and totally fraudulently fabricated interpretations, has religion made the poor, for their entire lifetime, offer dues to the high social strata. As it that isn't sufficient, the poor were sermonized to offer themselves freely as slaves to these usurpers and plunderers. This then is the highly acclaimed picture placed by religion before the world of its order of manners and morality. Quran challenges the entire world to offer an equivalent to any one of the items of its order of deen or make a law akin to it. The world cannot, because its economic system cannot harmonize with heavenly espoused permanent values. The system of deen is unprecedented and unequaled. The value system that religion espouses is common among all religions. Therefore, no religion can claim supremacy over another religion. To say so is false. Hence, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, in full support of Gandhism, stressed that universal truths will be found in every religion. By these universal truths is meant these very religious order of manners and morality, i.e., don't commit adultery, don't tell lies, don't steal, don't harass the poor, etc. Indeed, these truths are altogether found in all religions. In fact, no religion has this singularity.
Even the atheists are believers in these universal truths.
No one in the world would say that it is good to tell lies or to steal. Therefore, if Islam also offers the same order of morality and manners, then what does it mean when it claims that no man could offer an item equal or similar to its teachings? From this, it is evident that it places its teachings above this common order of manners and morality. It is unique, and its equivalent or parallel is just not possible because it is distinctively featured.
Common order of manners and morality comes in it simply by way of introduction and preamble.
Deen gives the order of life, a system, while religions offer nothing more than the basic principles of morals, manners and some rites and rituals. A section of religious followers,
whom the followers of mysticism describe as followers of Islamic jurisprudence, have to safeguard their sects pitched against each other or are in quarrel with other religions, for in this confrontation alone have they found a latent secret for survival.
Therefore, it ignores the order of manners and morality and turns towards acquiring gains and reformation for its customs and ways of life. It thus continually remained in polemical arguments and debates with other religions. As for the other section, the mystics, they gave less importance to the rites and rituals and emphasized cooperation with other religions on the basis of their order of morals and manners ending in a compromise. Hereafter, these compromises slowly and steadily adopted such a commonality that Ram and Rahim became two sides of the same coin. Since the world of mysticism is the creation of emotions, the poets fan it further. A wide field for poets and poetry is opened up, and the poets go to great lengths offering those arguments or reasons which are in fact no more than similes. In this way, poetry, for a lazy and inactive people, is an excuse of fully satisfying the world of make-believe. Slowly and gradually it seeps into their veins while they, in their monasteries, chambers and cells,
sit complacently in a corner journeying through in their thoughts alone the various stages of life.
In abstractions totally lost. Nor asleep, nor awake, nor vigilant, nor oblivious of his interest. When a matter of extreme importance concerning life crops up before him, then a verse of a poet, apt and apposite, is read out to him, after which that important matter of life is deemed to have been solved.
Religion keeps the simple folk entangled in polemics and leaves the field open to the rulers so that they can suck from humanity their last drop of blood.